I'm so glad you're here. Would you take a seat and let's dive into this. For those of you who I may not have met or have yet to meet, but you're watching and you're doing it in an anonymous format, that's fantastic. My name's David, and thank you very much. And I'm thrilled to be able to bring this message to you today, and this is the fifth and final portion of what we've been calling Family Matters. Your family does matter. God created the family, and we believe that He instituted this way back at the beginning. One man, one woman in a committed relationship for life. That is His ideal. And we've talked about we have to live between the ideal and the real, because what we're doing here today and family in general is just, it's complicated, and it can also get messy. The end of this service, we're going to have a commitment time. It's going to involve you, going to involve these families that are sitting right over here. You'll get to hear from them. Before we even get that far, though, guess what happened at Rock Springs this week? It's called VBS, also known as Vacation Bible School, and I'm just telling you, it was a wonderful, wonderful time. We had about 20 kids, and they showed up regularly, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was wonderful, and we had about 20 volunteers as well, and I'm so proud of them. If you were a part of Vacation Bible School for 2025 at Rock Springs Church, I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you please stand and show yourself? Come on, turn around, look at them, and give them a round of applause. Woo-hoo-hoo. We even had people that came from as far as Gallup, and we had people who came from like the Denver area. You may be seated and all that. Some people are very, very committed to VBS. I'll just tell you if they come that far. Thank you so much for all of our volunteers and all those who, especially things like marshmallow cannons. That was I think my favorite thing. Not everybody agrees with me on that one, but yeah, it was great. The children learned and memorized John 13:34. If you can find any children who went to VBS, some of them will be in here near the end of the service. Please ask them to quote that verse back to you, because what they were trying to do is to get it into their young minds and into their life that if we're going to love Jesus, then we need to live like Jesus and live it out. We even have a song. Was going to do all the actions for you because I led the worship this week, and that was like 20 minutes of aerobics every morning. And I haven't done aerobics in a long time. Thought I'd just drop dead, in the afternoons. Nah, I just went to bed early every night because I was exhausted. But it was wonderful to be a part of it. First time we've done Vacation Bible School at Rock Springs since 2016, but it probably will not be another 9 years before we do it again. If you have the opportunity to be a part of a VBS, I highly recommend it. It is a wonderful way to see what's happening in children's lives, families' lives, and plus it's like having 3 or 4 Sundays in a row, all in 1 week. So if you see any zombies that are walking around, that's the volunteers, because it was crazy. I also put it in my notes. I want to say a big way to go to Rock Springers, because this is our 5th blood drive that we're going to be having tomorrow, and the roster is full. And the folks who do the blood drive, that they handle all the details and get the blood for us. They say that we are one of the most responsive locations that they have. So I wanted to say to you, Rock Springs, thanks for being responsive. It does help our community. And I'll tell you what, I want a good blood supply if I'm in need of it. So next time we have that, please jump in. Just good. Way to go. Okay. If you're serious about letting truth change you, as Daphne was saying, we have discussion guides, and I think you ought to take advantage of those. You can do that online, or we have them in a printed version. But the point of that is to discuss the truth that we're learning in anything. Look into the book of James and faith in real life. If we're doing family matters, listen, discuss the truth that is involved, and then apply it. Because if we're not living it out, if we're not letting it change us, then what's the point? I want us to become more and more like Jesus. Now, here's the facts, and I told you this. God loves your family probably even more than you love your family. You go, that's not possible. Yeah, it is. He loves your family, and he loves it just the way it is and all of its chaos and messiness. But just like us as individuals, he loves us, he loves our family way too much to leave your family that way. That's why he gives us this instruction. The instruction that we've been looking at has to do with just the very basic things, and I hope that you're applying it. Because the things that we're applying is, don't give up on your family, don't get just only frustrated with your family. Lean into the tension, and the tension exists between this ideal that Jesus calls us to, that's what he desires for each and every family. You have to live with the tension that exists between that and the real, because the real sometimes just gets way too real. Could I get a little bit of feedback on that? Yeah, like too much. But I want us to pay attention to that tension between the real and the ideal, knowing that Jesus is going to work and walk with us through it all. Now, for those of you who are a geek like me, and that is like, how do you put it into Star Trek terms? One of the truths that God shared with us is the prime directive, and that is mutual submission. He said families are to exist on mutual submission. What can I do to help? What can I do to help? What can I do to help? And to actually state that and mean it and treat each other in the family. And I hope that you're keeping that habit going, is what can I do to help? Ask every other member of your family, what can I do to help? At least once a day, and keep doing that until you're not even drawing breath anymore. Now, the other had to do with, we also have to face the fact that not only do we need this submissive attitude, this idea of what can I do to help, to like, what can I put my shoulder up underneath? The other thing is, you know what might be going on here is I am not getting what I want. You've got to cultivate this idea of some humility, pride is getting in the way, and that creates such tension and not good tension in my family. You know what the part of the problem is? I am not getting what I want. Now, last week we talked about this table as being your family, and you set the table, you open the door, and you issue the invitation for reconciliation. Because if you are a normal family, there's probably someone in your immediate or secondary family that things are not going well with them. You can't fix them, and you're not going to be able to fix the situation unless there's cooperation. But Jesus said, you do what I do, and that is, I will move in the direction of people who do not agree with me, and I will set the table, open the door, issue the invitation. It's like, I want reconciliation. Doesn't solve all the problems, but it cultivates a heart of graciousness. So if you look at that and you rewind it, we're saying we start at the spot of grace, just like Jesus did with us. You move into humility, and you do a servant's heart. You're just trying to be like Jesus. Now, today, in our culture, ideally, it's a dad and a mom and kids. Great. We love that. That's the ideal. However, it's a little limited compared to the way most cultures around the world actually look at family. Because family in most cultures is not just a dad and a mom and two kids, it's grandparents. And they're very present. Aunts and uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins. It's not just your family. In a lot of ways, it's your tribe. It's your people. You go, well, that's the way my family is, and I say, kudos to you. But in our culture, what I'm trying to get us to see is it's all about the now. It's what's expedient right now. But in most cultures and throughout most of time, family has been about the past and the present and the future. It's looked at that way. And I think there's a lot of wisdom there, because if you stop and think about it, you are who you are because of who they were. Because they have left a lasting impression on you, whether you wanted them to or not. You are who you are because your grandparents and your parents are who they are. It gets passed from generation to generation, like I told you about this book. There's this picture of God set in motion the redemption of humanity through a family. And that got passed down to generation to generation to generation. And a lot happened in that family known as Israel. I want you to stop right where you are in your mind and think about the impact of the people who came before you. What kind of impact did they have? I mean, my name comes from my maternal grandfather and my paternal grandfather. Because my name is David Bradford Ramsey, Cyrus David Ivy. He was born in 1900. We lost him in 1981. I want to go like he went. He just sat down on the porch. He was gone. That's the way I want to go. But in the time that he was here, he impacted my life. He only had an 8th grade education. And yet every morning, to my knowledge, because I saw him do it, but I also have record of it, I have one of the, maybe you have it, a copy of the Living Bible in that green hardcover thing that it was very unique. But because of his educational level, reading the Living Bible was easier for him. But what I love about it is he would, in his scribbling handwriting, he would write the date that he read such and such passage, and then he would put the big idea that he got from that passage. He wasn't a preacher. He led music at his local church. But he loved Jesus enough to spend time with Jesus each and every day. And he left a legacy. And I now possess that Bible. Nanny, nanny, boo-boo to my 4 older cousins. I got that thing. My second name, Bradford, came from not only my granddad, Ramsey, but my dad, Ramsey. Because this is fun. I'm telling you my story. See, we love our stories. I even saw some of you just lean forward when I started telling you my family stories, because that's the way we work. It's a human being thing. My dad was a junior, therefore my granddad was a senior, and their names were Hester Bradford Ramsey. I am so thankful every single day that my mom vetoed any version of Hester. I'm just saying, where in the world did that come from? All right, just little bits. I'll tell you more. My paternal grandfather, we called him Brad, or that's the way he went by, and then my dad was HB, because it's confusing when they both have the same name. Yeah, my granddad, his dad was a one-armed preacher from North Alabama. He was a one-armed preacher. I think he was a preacher before the arm thing. He fell under a train while he was late for a train and tried to get on, slipped, fell under the wheels, and it cut off his arm. And yet, in the hills of North Alabama, he ran a sawmill. And back in those days, in order to snake the logs out of the forest, you'd have a mule team. And he could drive the entire mule team and pull those logs out with one arm. I'm just telling you, bad mamma jamma. I'm just telling you, woo! But anyway, got lots of that. So he was a preacher, and my granddad was a preacher, and my dad was a preacher, and I told God one day I was never going to be a preacher. Just be very careful of what you tell God you will never do. That's what I say. Okay. My mom and my dad. My mom's sitting right back there. My dad's already gone. I miss him every day. They were preachers' kids, so to speak. They'd grown up in the church. They knew all the right things. Even went to church camp, probably. Did you ever go to vacation Bible school, Mom? 100 times. Made commitments. Said they're going to surrender themselves to Jesus. This was in their teenage years. They met, got married, met at a fine Baptist institution, Baylor University. So many stories. My mom and dad. Is it all right if I tell this? Actually, I don't need your permission. I have the microphone. Back in those days at Baylor, you were required to attend chapel each day, wasn't it? Once a week, something like that. Anyway, they had seat assignments, and my dad was, only there to meet girls. So he got an assignment he thought was going to get him out of the chapel thing. Well, lo and behold, he got a seat assignment right next to my mom, and my mom was in the music school. My dad was in the business school. My mom was in the music school, and if you've ever been around music students, they usually have an entire armload of books because they have a lot to study, and my mom's, playing piano, singing, all that. She also decided she was going to take swimming, which is funny because my mom hates water of any kind, except the drinking kind. Well, no, you don't like that either. But the joke that my dad always told is that my mom failed swimming class because she was told that she had to swim across the pool. And she'd get halfway and say, I just can't do it, and then swim back to the other side. Love you, Mom. Love you, Mom. Anyway, great stories. They got out of school, got married. I showed up 9 months later. Their life got complicated. But they were in the early 60s trying to live the American dream. And they got all the right jobs and tried to work hard, and yet life got busier and they got more and more distant. And the way my dad used to tell it was that they had achieved this level of success, and then one day it seemed like they were passing like ships in the night because both of them were working. And they recall back to them, it was like, but we made commitments to God that looked different than this. So they got serious about it again, and all of a sudden, God takes them in a completely different direction. My dad goes back to school in order to get the education he needs in order to be on the staff of a church. They weren't making as much money, and yet God would provide in the most miraculous ways for them to pay bills. And then sometime in 1971, 72, felt the call of God to take Brad, Becky, and David and begin a ministry that would be considered vocational evangelism, to help churches be revived, Bible conferences to help deepen the commitments that churches had made. So they made that commitment and then started living by faith, and the only income was love offerings. And from 1973 until the time that we moved here in 1993, that is what they did. I, for a lot of those years, was a part of that team. And then I met Leanne because, you meet sweet girls like her at church. Went to her church in revival. Her family and my family committed to Christ, helped us get started when we didn't have a clue about what we were doing. Yeah, family's important. And I am marked in all kinds of ways by what they did. And even to this day, I think about this because he just had a birthday. Leanne's dad, his name is Wayne Greenup. It's the way you put in grass, you put the green up. Sorry. So I thought it was a funny family joke. Apparently y'all didn't. But he is a man of God that still inspires and leads me today. Miss my dad for those same reasons. I tell my snapshots of who the people are that influence me, and then there are names of people that influence me, and I don't even know really anything about them, but they influence my grandparents and my parents. And here we are today. You have a snapshot in your mind about this great aunt, or there was that, smelly grandfather, or, that way older sister that devoted herself to God so much and has the stories just go on and on. If you've ever been by a pond whenever it is just as still as can be, and then you pick up a rock and you throw it out into the middle of the pond, what does it do? It just ripples. Every single one of us and every single one of them is creating ripples. The question is, what kind of ripples did they create, and what kind are you creating? Because whether you want to or not, you're creating ripples. The decisions you are making now are rippling into your future. But you have to think about it. They created ripples in your past that are rippling into your future. What we're talking about here has profound implications. What steps are you making now? See, I told you about my granddad that's already gone. So it's nothing more than a snapshot. And I don't mean to be morbid, but if Jesus doesn't come back within our lifetimes, you're going to be nothing more than a snapshot for somebody else's stories. What you're doing right now is influencing people you will never meet. What I'm doing right now will influence people I've never met. You have a future family. You say, well, I've never been married. I'm not just talking about biological family. There are implications for those who are aunts and uncles and cousins and all that, but also a church family. I started off with this 3 or 4 weeks ago. You know that if you look at the families in the Bible, most of them were dysfunctional. Why? Because God uses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. And ordinary people are dysfunctional. The reason that Jesus came to die and redeem us is because we're all messed up. And some of you still come to church trying to impress the rest of us that you're not messed up. And I'm telling you, that's messed up. Okay, gotta move on. There is one family story in the Old Testament that really, I think, graphically illustrates this whole ripples effect. If you've been in church at all, I know you've heard about them. If church is marginal for you or you're tuning in for the very first time, this family is somebody you may have actually heard of. In fact, parts of it you go, yeah, I think I've been told that story. It's probably the second half. I'm just telling you, until you hear basically the whole story, and we're going to tell a very sweeping story from God's Word, then you can understand the second half because you now have a grasp on the first half. I think it makes a pretty solid case for paying attention to the ripples that you're making. It starts with probably one of the most famous men who has ever lived, because this man's name and his family is known across practically every culture to this day, and is the family of a man by the name of Abraham. Abraham had a family. He lived in an area called Ur, which is just like, where are you from? Ur. I was like, excuse you. He was pretty well off. He was doing what everybody else did, had a lot of stuff, but then God spoke to him and said, I'm going to do something through you that I've never done through anybody else. But it's going to require you to leave what is comfortable and you've got control over it. And I want you to go to some place. And Abraham says, where are we going? And God says, well, I'll tell you when you get there. And that's faith. What's faith about it is that Abraham trusted God, and God accounted that to him as, yep, that's what I'm looking for. Just trust me. Okay? He married a woman by the name of Sarah. How many of you are with me so far? You know about Abraham and Sarah? Yep, you know about that? Okay, cool. They had some kids. They were so dysfunctional because these two were having a hard time having kids. Just couldn't have kids. So Sarah comes up with this great idea because it was permissible in that culture. I have a servant girl. If you do the baby making with her, maybe then it's just so complicated. Well, guess what? They had a baby. And they named that kid Ishmael, which if you trace back the lineage is the father of the Arab nations. But God had made a promise, I'm going to give the two of you a baby, even when you don't think it can possibly happen. Because they were up into their 90s. I mean, it's crazy. And they had this baby. And his name, how many of you have the Sunday school pen and you want to prove it? You remember his name? Yeah, way to go. You get 100,000 points for that. Okay. Isaac, in the language that it was given, means laughter because they laughed at God that this was even going to happen. Yeah. And then you know what? Isaac grew up and he married a woman by the name of Rebekah, which happens to be my mom's name. And then Isaac and Rebekah had some kids. You get 1,000,000 points if you get this one. Do you remember the two boys' names? Because they were twins. What's that? Which is funny. We usually say Jacob and Esau, but they came out in the other. It was Esau and Jacob. In fact, it is said that because of the fact that Jacob had a hold of Esau's heel when he was coming out of the womb, that's why he got the name Jacob, because it means heel catcher or someone who's deceptive. Isn't it fun to tell family stories? Yeah. Esau was first, and especially in Middle Eastern culture, the order in which you were born had everything to do with your standing in that family. And Esau had first place. He was the first son. I'm just telling you, he was supposed to be more important because as the father dies and passes on to the son, you get twice as much of the inheritance because you are now the tribal leader. Everybody with me? Esau is supposed to get that. But remember, these people are dysfunctional, just like you and me. It's interesting that Jacob, though he was second and was also considered someone to be very deceptive, actually gets way more press than Esau does in any of these family stories. He gets more press in Genesis. In fact, we know, and I think I actually still have them. Do you know how long it's been since I have made any sort of things like we did at Vacation Bible School? I tried to do this, and I couldn't because it's just impossible to cut through this many pieces of paper. I was trying to make paper dolls to illustrate how many sons Jacob had. How many of you know how many sons that Jacob had? Very good. 12, that's where we get the 12 tribes of Israel. You say, but his name's Jacob. Yeah, but they changed his name because he had an encounter with God of his own. He said, I'm going to do something through you, even though you're a knucklehead and you came in second place. I think knucklehead is actually a theological term, but I'm saying I believe that. Jacob had 12 sons. Now, let's see. This is like 1,000,000,000,000 points. Of all the 12 sons, which one do you know that still has, like name above the title status? Very good. How many of you ever heard of Joseph and the multicolored dream coat? That was a guy who really lived, and he did have a whole lot of press. He got talked about a lot in the book of Genesis. I'm just telling you, this is where dysfunction really kicks in, because by the time Joseph, and he's kind of late in the game, he's down there around 11 or 12, that kind of thing. He's at the age of 17 or so, and he comes down to breakfast every morning and knows that God has his hand on him. God gives him dreams, and so he comes down to breakfast nearly every morning, and he has the audacity, the gall of a 17-year-old to talk. Guess what? I had a dream last night, and it was about these, all these stars, except there was this one big star, and I'm pretty sure that my dream meant that I was the big star, and all the other stars were you guys, and you were all bowing down to me. Now, I don't have any brothers or sisters, but it would seem like before I've had my Wheaties, to have my younger brother go, I'm all that in a bag of chips, and I don't know what you guys are, would get really annoying. I don't know whether I would want to kill him. I mean, I might say, I'm going to kill you. But I don't think I would really, really mean it. Anyway, his older brothers, he discovers, truly hate him. Not only for his ability to interpret dreams, but there is this passage that says that Joseph was his father's favorite son. I don't have a handbook on all this, but I don't think you're supposed to tell your kid, any one of your kids, you're my favorite. Just don't think that's the way that's supposed to go. The older boys are out doing stuff. One day, Jacob says to Joseph, go check on your bros, okay? Probably not the first time, but basically what was the reason he sent him is, I want you to go spy on them and figure out what they're doing and then come back and tell me. Again, so much dysfunction. He goes to where they're supposed to be. They're not there, so he keeps looking for them, and he sees them off in the distance. They see him, and their nickname for him is this dreamer. Well, here comes the dreamer. Here comes the dreamer. They see him coming. The spy is coming. At this point, they're pretty sure he's going to get them in trouble. So, like I said, I don't think I would kill my brother, but they actually gang up to say, you know what? Let's just take care of him when he gets here. We're going to kill him. So they ambush him. They strip off that beautiful coat that his dad had given him because he was his father's favorite son. They throw him in a pit. And because that kind of thing can work up an appetite, they sit down around the pit and they talk about him while he's in the pit. I think we should kill him. Nah, let's don't kill him. Yeah, let's kill him. And then one of them, and one of the older ones, says, you know what? I don't think we should kill him. I've got a better idea. Let's sell him. And they look up, and there's some Midianites coming through, and they're traders, and so they sell their brother. They sell him. They sell him into slavery. And then they take his coat, slaughter an animal, put blood on it, and then they go home and lie to their dad and mom about what happened to the favorite son. 17-year-old boy, fairly well-to-do family. They knew what the slave life was going to do to him. They don't seem to care. Can you imagine? They had to have had a funeral for Joseph, and they stand there and lie through their teeth to their parents. You thought your family was dysfunctional. They have sold Joseph. They're unsure if he's even going to survive. Doesn't matter to them. This guy, Joseph, young guy, gets sold, goes into Egypt. He's put on the auction block. A guy buys him. His name is Potiphar. He is in in Pharaoh's military. He needs some help around the house. So he gets sold to Potiphar. The thing about Joseph is that as a slave in Potiphar's house, listen. The thing that set Joseph apart is, yes, this was a difficult situation, but he decided in the midst of all that chaos and all the stuff that was going wrong, he decided to act as if God was with him. He had no church, he had no Bible, he had nothing except the stories he'd been told about what God had done through his grandparents and great-grandparents and so on and so forth. And he decided, I'm going to step out in faith and live my life as if God is with me. And he did it time and time again. You can read in the book of Genesis, and it shows up in two words, but God. But God. But God. It always trumped everything he was going through, even the stuff that was so... He could have said, you know what, by all the circumstances, I'm pretty sure God has abandoned me. And he's like, yep, but God's still there. And so he decided to do the right things, even when the right things rarely happened to him. And that's the attitude in Potiphar's house that got him a promotion, to the fact that he was running everything for this guy Potiphar. He had lots of liberty. He took care of things around the house because he was trustworthy. However, that higher profile got him in trouble, not because he wanted to get in trouble. It just got him noticed by Potiphar's wife. And to use the vernacular of our time, Potiphar's wife goes to Joseph and says, hey, I want you to be my pool boy, if you know what I mean. And Joseph says, because he is a man of character, even at his young age, he says, no can do. I don't do that because my master trusts me. That would dishonor my master, but more importantly, it would dishonor my God because I live my life as though God is with me at every turn. I'm ornery. So I ask of Scripture, I'm talking to Joe. I'm saying, Joe, you keep saying you are trusting this God. Is that the same God that allowed you to be thrown in a pit by your brothers? Is it the same God that allowed you to be sold into slavery? Is that the same God that allowed this situation where you're being accused of rape? Because whenever he said no can do, she turns around and accuses him of something he did not do. He got out of there so fast he left his coat. So they threw him in prison. But God, Joseph decided he'd still do the right thing even though he was being framed for rape, thrown in the slammer. I don't know because I've never been, but I'm pretty sure from everything I've read, it's a bad day to be a slave. I think it's pretty bad to be in a dungeon, especially back in the time whenever dungeons were actual dungeons. Because you're living in a time when there is no court date. You don't get on the docket. You don't get a court-appointed attorney. You just get thrown in the slammer and you just wait. You could wait forever. I don't know about you, but that might turn me bitter toward this God that I'm trying to trust. And yet, Joe continues to live like a man that believes that God is with him. All the circumstances around his life, I'm just telling you their stories, just like there are stories in your family and my family. Even when circumstances would lead you to believe that God has left the building, God's still there. And Joseph chose to believe that. Even when it was tough, and even when it was not what everybody else was doing, and even when it seemed like the right thing was not happening to him. And it is at this point in Joseph's life that we encounter a very strange verse. It should be on the screen. It is in your notes. This does have a point. Keep following the family story here, y'all. This is from the 39th chapter of Genesis, verse 21. Just read this. This is crazy. The Lord was with him. He, God, showed him, Joseph, kindness, watch, and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. How are you doing today? Oh, I feel blessed. I have been granted favor in the eyes of the warden. Is that what we really want to say? I feel blessed because my warden thinks highly of me. God says, I'm with you, Joe. Joe says, thanks, God, but if you're with me, can you be with me not in prison? I'm just asking because these are real people and we're so fortunate to have this relayed to us. Where did he get that kind of faith? Time rolls on. The big man in charge of the world at that time is Pharaoh. He gets very, very mad at his palace staff. As you are prone to do, because you can't count on, good palace staff anymore. So he throws them in prison, and this is where these people who work directly for Pharaoh meet Joe in prison. They have to sleep sometime. They have dreams. They start talking about their dreams. Joseph, if you will recall, has been given a gift by God to interpret dreams. So they're talking about their dreams. One of the guys that's in prison that got into trouble because Pharaoh was not pleased that day he was his cupbearer. He was the guy that would make sure that the wine was not poisoned. Okay? So he tells him his dream. The cupbearer tells Joseph his dream. And Joseph says, well, God's given me revelation on this, and your dream means that you're going to be restored to your job it's going to happen real quick. And then Joseph, not trying to be selfish, just leans in and says, when that happens and you get back on the outside and you're talking to some people, could you just bring me up in conversation that I would really like to have a court date or like something happen? Could you? And the cupbearer goes, you betcha. The guy gets out of prison just like Joseph said he would, and then it was crickets. Because the cupbearer, everything was going great, forgot to mention. It was right, yeah. So there he is, Joseph, still stuck in prison because of rape accusations. He's been slave traded by his brothers. 2 more years go by. He's still stuck in that awful, awful dungeon. But he has the consolation, well, my warden likes me. Two years later, Pharaoh has a dream. Pharaoh has a dream. The most important man in the room, the most important man in the world at the time. The funny thing is, Pharaoh's got people on the payroll that are supposed to be able to interpret his dreams, but they're not doing a very good job. All of his supposed wise people around him can't explain this awful dream that Pharaoh has that keeps coming back to him. Nobody can interpret it. And I'm just telling you, when you're large and in charge like that, he got a little hot under the collar. And it's at that point that the cupbearer remembers, oh yeah, there's a guy that I met while I was in prison, and he can interpret dreams. You raise your hand, you go, Pharaoh, sir. This guy helped me with my dreams. Maybe he can help you with your dreams. Next thing you know, somewhere down in the dungeon, you hear this voice in the distance. Is there anybody named Joseph in the room? Is there anybody named Joseph? That's me. It's like, well, you need to stand up. And then they throw him in the shower. They get him all scrubbed up. He gets a shave and a haircut. He gets some, I'm pretty sure he put on clean jeans and a new button snap. A pearl snap. That's what I would say. But they bring him into the throne room of the most powerful man on the planet. And Pharaoh says to him, I have heard the gods are with you and that you can interpret dreams. Now, don't skip over the little words in Scripture because it's very important to see what's going on here. This is all family history. This is what Joseph says. He has his moment in the sun, and he says to the most important man on the planet, he says, no, I can't, but my God can. Okay, that sounds all wonderful. It sounds very noble, spiritual. What he just said to the most important man on the planet is, there's somebody more important than you, and I trust him. Okay, so that puts Pharaoh in second place. There you go. Everybody looks over at Pharaoh, and he says, great. I'm going to tell you my dream, and I need to know what it means, please. And he tells him his dream. You can read for yourself all the particulars of this. And Joseph says, essentially, he says, oh, that's easy. That dream that you just had, that's easy. Here's what it means. For the next 7 years in the land of Egypt, or basically the known world, everything's going to be booming. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to be hitting on all cylinders. And when those 7 years come to an end, the next 7 years after that, it is going to be complete bust. It is going to be a famine. It is going to be economy-wrecking shift in economics. And then he says, let's review everything I just said. He said we're going to have 7 up years, and then we're going to have 7 down years. Oh, and he says, before you let you have the microphone back, there's one more thing. I've got some advice for you, Pharaoh. Okay, that's bold. He said, here's my advice, is you better find somebody who is a very strong administrations guy, somebody who's really good in logistics, and you need to put that guy in charge of all the grain silos in your nation. And here's what I would suggest is that you need to require 20% of all the output of everyone in the nation so that you can store it up in all of those silos. So that whenever the bad days arrive, and they will because they are coming, you can sell all of that back to the people, and that way the nation will make it through the tough times, and you will be able to make money to take you into the next economic season. I'm just saying, you better get started because the clock is ticking. So, Pharaoh looks around, and instead of being offended by this, he says, good idea, and I've got something for you. You're the man. I found the man. He's standing right here in front of me. You are the guy. He is not very old, but he basically has to say to the most important man in the room, most important man on the planet, when he says do it, then you need to hop to and get that done. And I can imagine the people who were around Pharaoh going, he's not even from here. But Pharaoh would turn to them and say, yeah, but y'all are a bunch of knuckleheads and you didn't help me. He's at least got a plan, and so that's what we're going to do. So Joseph gets the job of the prime minister. He's the second in command as far as the government of Egypt is concerned. He gets to work. He does his job really, really well. Everything's going and growing. It's wonderful. And then on January the 1st of the 8th year, it all starts heading south. People are hurting. And so Joseph starts reversing the process. He starts selling and distributing all the grain. It is working to keep Egypt afloat. It's working for all the Egyptians. But then the surrounding nations are also going through the same hurt. And they come to Egypt and they say, may we please have some more. They're 2 years into the famine. The family of Joseph, way down there, is running out of food. And so they get on their camels and they come to Egypt and they say, we would like to buy some. Now, back to the family. Jacob, Israel, if you will, Daddy Jacob, he's changed his name to Israel. He is in the land of Canaan. And this is verse 5, 6, and 7 from chapter 42. So Israel's sons, all those guys that threw Joseph in the pit and sold him into slavery. So all of Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain, for there was a famine in the land of Canaan also. So now Joseph was the governor of the land of Egypt, the person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Oh, how the tables turn. This is what I love. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them. What would you do if you had that kind of power? At this time, Joseph is 39 years old. It has been 22 years since he has seen his brothers, since the last time they saw him. But there they all are, all lined up in a row, and they're all bowing down to him. I don't know. Could get onto a power trip about that time, couldn't you? They start speaking, and he remembers their voices because he remembers them talking above him while he was in the pit. There's PTSD in all of this. He's got 10 brothers plotting his murder, we're going to sell him. All the laughs, all the money changing hands, all the lack of mercy. For all practical purposes, he is dead to them. He has ceased to exist. But this is a man who had no Bible and no church. I'm pretty sure he didn't know that we'd all be talking about him today. But in the family, in the pit, in the framing, in the dungeon, in the new job, he always remembered scenes from his early childhood. And he always connected the dots of faith. And he did that as they bowed down to him. And this is the part of the story that rarely gets connected because we have to rewind all the way back to whenever he was a kid. Actually, further. Because remember, Abraham, Isaac, Esau, and Jacob, the twins. Remember Esau and Jacob whenever they were in their teen years. When they were in their teen years. You have to understand they're very different temperament people. Esau is an outdoorsman, loves to hunt, does all that stuff. Jacob loves to stay up close to the house, take care of things. He was a lot like his mother. He was very conniving. You can read all of that yourself. But also, while he was up close to the house, he became a very stellar cook. And in Genesis, you see that Esau, in those teen years, he was out hunting. He got nothing. He came in, he was famished. He was so hungry. And Jacob had some real good stuff on the stove. Smelled good. Esau walks up and says, Jake, I'm starving. What have you got? Sounds like you got some stew. Give me some stew or I'm going to die. And then Jacob says, to himself, I wonder what I can get out of this. So he's stirring and he's thinking. He says, how about I give you some stew and you give me your first place birthright? Remember, birthright entitles him to over half of Dad's stuff. Now, listen to me. We got kids and people coming in because we're going to wrap up the service here in just a minute. Esau basically says to Jacob, it's a deal. Just give me some of that stew. And the Bible writes it down. He despised his birthright. So here's the deal. In just a few minutes, he wasn't hungry anymore. The stew is gone, but so is his birthright. Time passes. Isaac, the dad, getting really old, can't see. He calls his boys in to give them the blessing, which the blessing at that time was a legally binding ceremony. And it was his intent. What he wanted to do for his boys is he wanted to give his eldest son the power of the tribe. He wanted that to happen to him. Whoever curses you and blesses you, they'll be cursed or blessed. Long story short, you probably know the story, is that Jacob, with the help of his mom, sneaks in to a dark room with a nearly blind Isaac. He covers up his arms with fur because his brother Esau was very hairy. He lowers his voice and says, I've come in for my blessing. After a bit of confusion, that's when Isaac finally gives Jacob the blessing instead of Esau. So all the authority now, all the power, all the resources of the firstborn now belong to the secondborn, and his name is Jacob. Esau comes in later expecting to receive the blessing, and Isaac is just devastated that he can't withdraw it from Jacob and give it to Esau. It's a done deal. He can only give it once. And Jacob got there first. Esau is so angry. He is so angry with his brother because he has literally robbed him of everything that was rightfully his, and there's nothing he can do about it. That's why it says in Genesis 27:41, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him, and he said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, meaning we will not be mourning anymore after that, and then I will kill my brother, Jacob. Word gets back to Jacob, you need to get out of Dodge, because your brother is coming for you. So he runs and he hides himself away. Goes to live with his uncle. His uncle has 2 daughters. Over the next 20 years, he works for his uncle so that he'll have the right to marry both the daughters, Leah and Rachel. Leah has a bunch of kids. 1 son, another son. Rachel can't even get pregnant. And so she says, take my servant. He has a son with the servant girl. In the end, he winds up with 4 wives and 11 sons. He gets super wealthy. He has a bunch of herds. His uncle says, this town's not big enough for the both of us, so you need to go. Then after 20 years, God speaks again in Genesis 31. Then the Lord said to Jacob, it's time to go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. We read it, and it feels far off and distant. When he says land of his fathers, he's talking about the land of Abraham and of Isaac and Esau. And Jacob's thinking, God, you better be with me. Because if I go back home and if Esau is still the same man that I left 20 years ago, he's not only going to kill me, he's going to kill my family, my sons. He's going to take all my women and all my stuff, and he will think I'm vindicated. Okay, family story, very important. These were real people, real situations with trying to deal with real faith. They were just like you and me. Imagine that Jacob would tell these stories to his kids and his grandkids, and he would tell them over and over and over and over again so that you would know the story. So imagine what it was like every time he says, we're going to go, imagine what it would be like for Jacob whenever he says, we're going to go back and see Esau. That seems dangerous, doesn't it? Yeah, but we're still going. So they pack up, and I want you to see it because it's very dramatic. Jacob's rich guy got all these herds, slaves, servants, wives, kids, all this. Esau gets wind that they're coming his way. This is Genesis 33. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau way off in the distance, but he was coming toward him with 400 of his men. Not women and kids, men, because he has a small army. Jacob knows what's about to happen. It's too late to do anything about it, but this is what he decided to do. He divided up all the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants, and he put the female servants and their kids in front, Leah and her kids next, and then Rachel and the favored son, Joseph, in the rear. Only one of the 11 sons is mentioned by name. His name is Joseph. He is not miles back. He's just at the end of the wagon train. He's near the front of the line where everybody can see him. And watch what it says, that he himself, Joseph, went on ahead toward Esau, and he bowed down to the ground 7 different times as he approached his brother. Imagine Esau being up on a ridge, walking, bowing, walking, bowing. Esau sees it. So does Jacob's family. Everybody's destiny hangs in the balance. This is the man that everybody's heard these stories about for the last 20 years. And the parade just keeps on going. But here's what happened. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him and threw his arms around his neck and kissed him. And then they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and the kids, and he says, "Who are these with you?" And Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." And then the female servants and their kids approached and bowed down. And then next Leah and her kids came and bowed down. And last of all, Joseph and Rachel, and they bowed down too. This is the story that Joseph would have heard from his childhood. You remember that day that Uncle Esau spared your dad's life? And Joseph, he spared your life too. Now that you're older, Joseph, you understand your dad deserved whatever your uncle was going to dish out that day. But on that day, the reconciliation and the grace and the stuff that nobody expected or deserved, that's why you're here today. Now it's 30 plus years later, and there's Joseph, most important guy in that room. He has his own brothers in front of him. He's got the power of life and death in his hands. And Joseph chose to do for them what he saw his uncle do for him. Joseph chose to do all those things because he had been trusting and living his life as though God was with him. So he extends mercy to his brothers who deserve no mercy whatsoever. Okay, big, heavy story. Lots of chaos, fun. Got lots of life in this room. He says to his brothers, "I may walk like an Egyptian." I may talk like an Egyptian, but I'm Joseph, your brother. Which would be very freaky, because they haven't seen him since he's 17. And then they see that it is truly him. And one of the classic things that is said is that you guys might have intended all of this toward me for evil, but God intended it for good. Joseph does everything that is necessary on his part to restore the relationship. He provides for his whole family, and he says, "This is what God would have me do." What is the moral of our story? When your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, nephews see you do what you do, you are laying the groundwork for what they will do in the times of crisis that will come to them. Listen, parents, this is very encouraging. They're going to forget practically everything you say to them. But they will never forget who you are in front of them. They will never forget what we did when you chose to do the right thing when things were very, very tough. When you stayed instead of running away, when not paying your debt would have been easier, but you buckled down and you got it done. When getting drunk would have been a lot more enjoyable than staying sober. When finding help for your addiction was the last thing on earth you wanted to do. So dads, granddads, let me tell you, What if the thing that you do today is the thing that your son, your grandson, your nephew takes his cues from 20 years from now? What if you are his role model and how he treats your future daughter-in-law, his wife? What if what you're doing is how he will raise his grandkids? What if what you do is what he will do to overcome temptation and crisis? Moms, grandmoms, listen. What if your daughter, your granddaughters, what if your pattern is what they're cutting their life out with? About how they treat their husbands or their son-in-laws, how they treat their kids and their grandkids. Parents, what if your view of money and the way the world is going and faith and temptation is all what they're going to do? What if you have the impact to actually impact future generations? Because you do. You will have an impact one way or the other. Unless Jesus comes back, I'm just saying, most of us won't be around to see how all this plays out, but write this down. Actions don't just speak louder than words. Often they ripple into the next generations. My point in telling you all these stories is to get you involved in the Bible. You should read it. It's wonderful. But also the point is that your family matters, not just here and now, but what you're doing now has ripples into the future. Please don't overlook that. Sort this out. Live in the tension. Turn the tables on your selfishness. Because if all of this is true, what would you do differently? What do you need to change? Why don't you change it today? Because I think it would be cool to imagine your future grandkids or great-grands sitting at their kitchen table looking at a photo of you someday. And you go, I'm so glad that they lived for God. I'm going to pray a prayer to conclude this portion. Then we're going to invite families up here. You're going to hear from them briefly. We're all going to make commitments. We're going to be invited to make commitments. And today is going to be a very important day for a lot of us. But let me pray for us. Lord, everything we've looked at here today, and we've skimmed through a lot of years in what you did at the beginning of trying to get this started through a family. But the implications of it are so overwhelming. The impact of our choices now is going to have such an impact on their then. So Lord, no matter what age or stage we're in, whether we're single, married, no kids, lots of kids, would you just sober us up about how important all this is? Give all of us your vision for families, for our families. Give us the courage to make ripples for you. Lord, my heart's desire for this whole series is may our families be centered around your family. And would you please give us the ability to tell family stories that are worth telling. To your honor and glory, I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.